vast majority of us have a solid sense of security when the weather conditions turns terrible. We have houses, palaces of steel, mortar, and wood. We have TV and the web, frameworks to caution us about anything really risky. Current life serves each need. Beside catastrophic events, weather conditions seldom represents an issue in the 21st century. Gone are the times of sloppy caverns, of cabins and towns. Presently, we live in landmarks to our accomplishment. Thus, when downpour descends in sheets, when breaks of light parted the air open and resonating thunders follow, we feel only fervor. Yet at times the air past our walls is adequately fierce to scare us. The breeze is sufficiently strong to make our homes squeak, and the tap of the downpour transforms into thunder. Then at that point, thunder emits right outside, inconceivably uproarious. The ground shakes. What's more, briefly, a base desire to conceal dominates. Our senses are covered profound, however the untamed could of a tempest can dig them up. Since at the center we're actually terrified creatures. We just redesigned our caverns. It was on such a loud night that I ad rest the spirit eater. I'd completed my night customs and slithered under the sheets. The commotion of the downpour support me from the get-go, a calming static respite. Be that as it may, when the tempest heightened, my breath developed shallow with nervousness. I've never messed with mental assistants, so I don't have any idea what analysis they'd give my cerebrum. Yet, whatever plagues me, it's curved my contemplations since youth. I contemplated my psyche a great deal that evening, laying in my bed as the window streaked with lightning. For what reason am I how I'm? What's the significance here to be me? Is it even worth the effort to be me? These inquiries whirled in my mind as the tempest seethed outside. I tracked down no responses. Fascinatingly, the vast majority would really need to be me, or possibly to carry on with my way of life. I'd made progress recorded as a hard copy thrill ride books, and my assets were noteworthy. My home was great and impressive, arranged in a forest corner of a decent area. However, it was unfilled. No one shared my home with me. I was likewise unfulfilled myself. I had no one with whom to share my actual self. I was hyper-conscious of the way that I'd passed up youthful love, that wonderful, euphoric experience. 30 years of age and alone? Certainly I could track down somebody. However, the harm of depression had proactively been finished. Furthermore, since I wasn't living for another person, what was I truly living for? I'd never especially appreciated life. At the point when I was a youngster, I lived in light of the fact that I had a future. At the point when I was in my mid-20s, I lived to deal with my mom. At the point when I was in my late 20s, I lived in light of the fact that I had stories to tell. Now that the future was here, my mom was gone, and my accounts were told. What was left? Long periods of decaying in this chateau, of attempting to recuperate the sensation of the adolescent I squandered. It could stay away forever. Not a very remarkable point in proceeding. The thunder rang out like 1,000 simultaneous gunshots. My house, my enormous, empty house, shuddered, shaking dust from the ceiling. Instinctively, I pulled the blankets over my head before a sense of shame for my childish reaction took over and forced the covers back down. I realized I needed to sleep. My thoughts were taking a dark turn. My emotions were bubbling to the surface, dredged up by the storm. I tried to lie still and shut off my thoughts. Seconds turned to minutes, then to hours. I was preparing myself to go grab some Ambien when another crack of thunder exploded over the house. As the rumble faded, I heard something else, a dull thud from downstairs. The front door had been slammed shut. I remembered locking it that night. I lay quietly, pondering. A robbery? Should I call the cops or pretend to sleep? What if it wasn't a robbery at all? Perhaps some poor soul, caught in the storm, had sought shelter. "Nicolas!" called a deep voice from outside my room. My heart froze. Goosebumps broke out across my entire body. Whoever was out there, they sounded like no human I'd ever met before. I tried to sit upright. Nothing happened. I couldn't move. It was like I was held in place by an invisible weight. Sleep paralysis. It happened to me from time to time. The phenomenon always carried a heavy burden of fear due to a concoction of hallucinations, but this time I found it somewhat reassuring. It meant the voice outside my door wasn't real. I held my breath as the doorknob turned, slowly, agonizingly. My bedroom door creaked as it swung open, and a figure came into view. The man was floating, horizontally, as if he lay face down on thin air. As he drifted across the room and over my bed, I had a sickening realization. It was me, my body, my face, even the pajamas that I had at that very moment. He became motionless as he hovered directly above me. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Then his mouth moved, and the voice that emerged was so alien I couldn't imagine it syncing with a person's lips, much less my own. "Hello, Nicholas," deep, knowing, mournful, as if the ocean could speak. And above that, a barely perceptible static buzz in the words. I only stared. "Come on now, be polite," chided the ghost. I found I could speak. "You're not real," I told him. At this, my face, suspended just a few feet above me, only smiled. "I was thinking we could have a conversation tonight." The hallucination's voice boomed around the room, echoing from more distant corners of the house. "About what?" I asked him. I tried to move my arms and legs, but they refused to respond. It would be a long night. "Life," I answered with a stare, at which the facsimile of me broke into an even larger grin. "Let's start with a question. Why are you still alive?" Of course he knew my thoughts. This was, after all, my dream. Still, a weird feeling crept through my paralyzed body when he mentioned the exact same question I'd just asked myself. "Because my life has value," I answered. "Hardly a satisfactory answer, Nicholas. Why does your life have value?" the ghost said in that unearthly voice. I hesitated for a few moments. There are good things in my life. I eat well, I relax, I want for nothing. Good? The floating version of me chuckled. Eating well is good? Relaxing is good? What about the bad, Nicholas? It doesn't matter how satisfied your material urges are if your soul is diseased. I didn't answer. The fear that had dissipated minutes ago returned at the words. This didn't feel like a normal dream. Ponder this. How does the good in your life compare to the bad? The negatives are overwhelming. You have more regret than pride. You have more anger than joy. You have more aches and pains than comfortable moments. And your loneliness outweighs your love with the gravity of a world. "Shut up," I told the thing and shut my eyes. Again I tried to move, and again my body failed me. "No," the word resounded, sonorous and static, from inches above my face. I opened my eyes and found the ghost had moved much closer. The smile had left his face. Every moment is a battle between joy and pain, and which one wins the majority of the time. There's no formula I can contrive to prove this to you, but you know the truth deep within you. You see, Nicholas, here's the truly sad aspect of all this. You live a better life than the vast majority of all humans that have ever lived, and you're still unhappy. What does that tell you about life? Life is suffering, I conceded. It was a mantra some of my characters liked to repeat. He smiled again, suspended over me, and floated upwards a few inches. I hated my own face at that moment, a taunting and smug grin. "So why live?" His question came out as a whisper that held more menace than any of the previous booming statements. I stared up at the being. "Faith," I answered after a minute. His laugh was loud and rolling, like a series of crashing waves. "Faith," he repeated. "Faith in what? Life is made of uncertainty. What if there's someone up there? Someone up there? You pitiful thing. You must know there's nobody, nothing. And if, by some great accident, there was a being that created you, would you not curse it for your flaws, for the suffering inherent in what you are? A God which created you would be nothing short of evil." I can't explain it. I don't have to. That's what faith is, a passion for something greater than yourself. But as I said the words, I knew I didn't believe them. I'd never been religious. "Liar," taunted the ghost, as he pointed an arm down at me. And even if you weren't attempting to deceive yourself, think of the very notion of grand scheme of things, some kind of cosmic plan. Is it truly a comforting idea that you are merely a cog in the machine created by an incomprehensible force? A cold feeling spread through me at that, but I forced myself to ignore it. I kept forgetting it was still a dream, only a manifestation of my subconscious. I couldn't let it disturb me, but there was something about the way the ghost moved and spoke that just wasn't right. It was like no sleep paralysis episode I'd ever suffered. "Nicholas, why live?" asked the hallucination once more. "Because the future," I answered. He smiled and opened his mouth, but I cut him off. "And no, not because I think I'm destined to be successful like I used to think. I mean because I can wake up tomorrow and go to Europe, because I can choose to do anything I want. Maybe I am unhappy, Maybe there's really nothing divine out there, but I have the freedom to choose my life. I felt determined to beat this thing. As I understood it, the dream would end when I proved him wrong, showed him that my life was worth living. He stared down at me, not visibly angry, but when he spoke, that static buzz in his voice was more noticeable. Wrong. For the first time, I noticed his eyes. They were not exactly like mine, some kind of yellow tint pervaded them. Wrong, he said again. You aren't free, you worm. You are a puppet, a biological object used to perpetuate your species. You say you can go to Europe tomorrow, but you won't. You only do what your urges tell you to do. You are the sum total of the forces that evolution built inside of you. That raised even more defiance in me. You know what? That doesn't even matter. I feel free, and so I am. Fundamentally, there's no difference in my reality either way. But Nicholas, even if you feel free, is that not a negative experience? Is there not horror in being forced into this world without meaning, a wanderer condemned to seek something he can never find? As long as you hold this delusion close to your heart, that you are free, you will never be satisfied, because you must surely believe there is some combination of choices out there that will save you from what you are. The cold feeling returned, and I recognized it for what it was, the realization that the ghost was right. For all the malice and hopelessness that poured out of his grinning mouth, his refutations made sense. The ghost didn't stop. That's the bane of it all, really, consciousness, that awareness, that sickening knowledge that you exist. Human beings, they don't really want to be beings, they just want to be. But yourself cannot ever simply be, for it strives constantly. Yourself, Nicholas, strives to disintegrate. Look behind the veil of the most enjoyable activities in this life and realize they are a process of becoming unself. Sex, drugs, love, even fun itself. Happiness is the process of killing self-awareness. I squeezed my eyes shut and tried to move, hoping that the nightmare would end. When I opened them again, the ghost lay on top of me. I could see nothing but his eyes, so much like mine, but with a strange yellow light behind them. "What do you want?" I asked him. "Your soul," he said. "I thought I was just a biological creature without a soul. Then it should be nothing to relinquish." "What do you want me to do?" I whispered. "Give up," he whispered back, and static filled the room. The ghost floated higher, nearly disappearing into the murky gloom of my high-arched ceiling. Then he began to change, and the facade of me, the facade of humanity, fell away like a withered leaf, and I saw how vast the thing truly was. It hung in the air like smoke, and filled the mind in a way that pushed out all ability to describe it. When I regained my words, I asked, "What are you?" "The Soul Eater," it said, a dry buzzing in its words. I did not respond. "Nicholas, it's time," the demon told me. "Give in, let me have it." The thing was right. It was right about me. It was right about the world. It was right about life. "No," I spat the word. Something in me wanted to live. The demon above shifted and writhed. "Why?" "Because what is life for if not continuation? There's a force inside me, and I want to preserve it. I don't care how shitty things are." The Soul Eater hissed. It grew until there was nothing else, and then it tried to strip my soul. There's not much I can say that will accurately describe what I felt at that moment. It should suffice to say that I am scarred, and I will never forget it. But I won. I fought off those grasping threads of spirit. Life won. Eventually, the Soul Eater withdrew. "You and I, we will do this again." A lump of dread manifested in me. What if the being came when I was weak? Then I realized I just fought it off at my weakest moment, and some sort of pride filled me. "And I will win again," I told it. "You've won millions of times already, but on one of these repetitions, you will fail." You see, Nicholas, the universe repeats itself. It expands, it contracts, it re-expands, and every time the same things happen almost. There are two things that change. The first is myself. I have been present for every rise and fall, from the dawn of time and before. I exist in another place, in another way. The universe does not control me, and so I last through the endless back and forth, living through realities as you live through minutes. The second, Nicholas, is that the universe is dying. Every expansion, every contraction, it grows weaker, fainter. And you, right now, are an uncountable number of expansions from the beginning. One of these days, you will have faded enough to give in. There is a secret only I know, Nicholas. "What?" I asked, terrified to hear the answer. Everything already ended, the thing hissed in a hoarse whisper. It's over. The universe once existed in glory, but it's dead now. You're just the fading ripples, a pale echo of what once was. And with that, the Soul Eater moved back through my door, out of my house, and into the night. As soon as it left, I found I could move again. I held my hands to my face and cried, just sobbed for the longest time. It had to have been the most traumatic dream of my life. But of course it was just that, a dream. Sleep paralysis, a common psychological phenomenon. That didn't explain why my door was open. It's been decades since my discussion with the Spirit Eater. My life is different at this point. I found a spouse that I love. I had children, little heaps of satisfaction and energy that exhaust and pleasure me. Gone are the times of lying alone in my bed, gazing up at the roof thinking about where I was going wrong. Thus, when I have negative contemplations, when I start to contemplate whether this world merits living in, the response is lying right close to me and in rooms across the corridor. In any case, at times, I see a recognizable figure somewhere far off external my home. Or on the other hand, while I'm driving the children to school, I spot a brief look at my doppelgänger out and about, drifting only a couple crawls off the ground and smiling. Furthermore, briefly, I remember everything. I feel all that I felt that evening. I understand I've covered reality with a coarse-reading way of life intended to satisfy. Since at the center, I'm as yet a desolate creature, battling off the reality of a cold-blooded world. I just redesigned my guards,